and in commemorative activities and veterans groups, and becomes quite a spokesman. He lives in World War II and becomes quite an advocate for British veterans. Von Sanders lives, I think, up until World War II, but he kind of goes into a life of obscurity, if you will. He writes some memoirs, but he doesn't actively participate after he retires from the Army. I don't know the answer. That's a good question. I don't think so. Your question, and then she gets the mic.
Okay, thank you very much for this excellent lecture. I have a question. If I understood you correctly, you said that without Colonel Mustafa Kemal, the battle could have been won eventually. You said, did I understand you correctly? Yes. But now, I mean, is that an accepted hypothesis, or is it? I mean, it's something like that. But before you answer me, I want to mention 3 points. One is, as you very well know, I mean, on the 25th of April, he stopped the Anzacs just below the Chonapaya, right? That's one point. The second is, he became a group commander at the Anafartala front on the 8th of August, right? And then he attacked the British on the 9th of August, pushed them up to the sea. And then he turned his attention to the Chonapaya on August 10th and attacked the British, and then they pushed them back to the sea as well, almost to the sea. These 3 points, of course, besides all these things, he's done a lot of many things, good things, of course. But just these, what do you think about just those 3 points? Were they not decisive to win the battle?
Yeah, those are the 3 critical points that Churchill identifies in the world crisis. My research leads me to the conclusion that he's not the first one at Anzac. The first units there belong to the 27th Regiment. His 57th Regiment will come 3 hours later. Would the 19th Division have just sat in Bigoli while the 27th Regiment fought it out with the Anzacs? I don't think so. I think whoever would have commanded that division would have brought it forward. The Turkish mythology has him there first. He's not there first. It's Mehmet Shafik and the 27th Regiment who actually stopped the Anzacs at the critical point about 7 in the morning before Kemal shows up. He's an important guy. If you take him out, would the Anzacs have gone farther? I don't think so. He's put in charge of Anafarta on the 7th of August, and he replaces a guy named Fevzi, who's coming down from Belair with 2 divisions. The units are still there. Mustafa Kemal would be the commander, but the units are still en route. They're still filling in the battle space. So with or without Kemal, that whole Saribera Ridge fills in with Ottoman soldiers. Kemal then does launch a major counterattack on what's called the plateau and the farm, Rhododendron Ridge, on August 9th and August 10th. It's a tremendously successful attack, and it pushes them off the crest. But that's about all it does. Had they stayed on the crest, had the British stayed on the Australians and New Zealanders stayed on the crest on August 10th, would it have changed anything? My opinion, probably not. So he adds tremendous value to the Ottoman effort, but I don't think his presence is critical. There are always Ottoman soldiers there, with or without him, who stop the British in their tracks at the time. But that's a good question. This is Ed's idea, Ed's theory. My books advance this view that Kemal is not critical. He's not a critical determinant to the success. He adds value, but so yes.
My question sort of hits on that same theme. I've read that Mustafa Kemal commands his troops to die. And in fact, most of them in that operation do die, and the number of the regiment has never been used again in the Turkish army. Is that correct? Or is that a myth?
He gives the famous command, I don't order you to attack, I order you to die, at around 10 or 11 in the morning of April 25th. And the 57th Regiment comes into the battle line to help the 27th Regiment from the 9th Division. It's an apocryphal story. We don't really know if he actually said it. In his memoirs, he alludes to it. But if he didn't say it, he gave some comparable verbiage. The 57th Regiment continues on in the Ottoman force structure. I don't know if it exists today in the Turkish force structure. To my knowledge, there's the lineage continues. That the number was. Say again?
19th Division exists today.
Yeah, the 19th Division exists today. Yeah. The 19th Division has 3 regiments: the 57th, the 77th, and the 72nd. The one in question that morning is the 57th. So it's one of three regiments of his division. A good question. I really don't know.
You said that the Anzac forces were supposed to land at V Beach, and instead they went farther north where the terrain was very high and steep. Was the terrain more favorable at V Beach, and might they have succeeded to reach their objectives if they landed there?
Yes. Z Beach is a very long, wide beach, and it flows up into kind of a shallow valley. So it's much more gently ascending terrain than they encountered at Anzac Cove. The unsaid thing about Z Beach is it was heavily covered by fire. The Ottomans were pretty sure that would be a landing zone of choice. So the Gallipoli fortified position raped that beach with machine gun and artillery fire. So had they come ashore there, it would have been something more like W Beach or V Beach down on Cape Helles. I don't think they would have got very far. Better terrain, but much more. It was a lethal death trap that the Turks had set up there. That's a good question.
I think we should ask for one more question, and then we have a short presentation as well.
If you examine the historiography of Gallipoli, for a very, very long time, it almost exclusively dwelt on Allied incompetence. Why lately now are we beginning, as your book does, to pay tribute to the leadership and the courage of the Turks? Why did this all change? What happened historiographically?
Yeah, for those of you that have the book, the introduction talks about the historiography. The historiography means the story of history. There are 4 generations of historiography of this campaign. This is the 4th generation or narrative. The first one is basically an apology for the British. We made too many mistakes. The second one is a raking over the coals of British commanders, like Stopford and Hamilton and those guys. The third one, historiography, runs from about 1976 to about 2000, and it's inclusive of the human condition. It's all about experiences and the cultural norms and what it's like to be a soldier. The 4th generation, historiography-wise, is from 2000 forward, and it's inclusive of the Ottoman records. The Ottoman archives famously were closed for many, many, many years. So some of the first people that were able to get in and look at the Ottoman side of things, Tim Travers, myself, Harvey Broadbent from Australia. So the latest round is inclusive of the Turkish narrative. It looks at the Turkish side of things. So this is the big change in the last 15 years to the unfolding and understanding of the story of this campaign. If you were looking at the Civil War in the United States only from the Confederate perspective, you would not get an accurate picture of any campaign of that war. Gettysburg, for example, there are 3 historiographies, narratives of Gettysburg. The first one is that for 80 years, the lost cause mythology. Lee lost the battle because his subordinates let him down. The next narration of Gettysburg, Lee let his subordinates down. He made bad decisions and didn't supervise. The current historiography of Gettysburg is inclusive of the federal record, and it basically says George Meade fought one hell of a battle. George Meade made great decisions, right stuff, right time, right place. So history changes. Yep, that's a good question. Thank you.
Thank you all. I'd like to introduce Erju Ackman, who is going to make a presentation.
Actually, I do feel silly because it's not my only feelings, but I think I share in your feelings. We're going to give a certificate of recognition to Professor Erickson, and it says, for his selfless dedication to Turkish military history and providing an important body of critical academic work through honest, careful research and sharing his understanding with a series of lectures to help create an invaluable awareness for the public at large. But also with this, I'm going to present him with a rare 1 of 100 silver coins struck during the Atatürk Centenary in 1981. Thank you, Dr. Erickson.
For those of you who are Turkish, I have a great affection and admiration for not only the Ottoman Army, but for the modern armed forces of the Republic of Turkey. It is a premier military in NATO. They're hard-fighting men. They're good at what they do. I wish they were, I won't get into ISIS, but it's a great army. I couldn't be more pleased that the sledgehammer case is behind us. That's all I would have to say. I have great affection and admiration for the Turkish army and its Ottoman predecessor. Thank you. And I am a great admirer of Ataturk, in spite of what you made several books about him. So he's my hero. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you all very much. As you can probably figure out by the wonderful fragrances, there's some food set out around for everyone.
Oh, I would.